On this episode of the Salary Scramble,
a lot of 9 to 5, a lot of creatives, the biggest dream is being able to have something to fund your passion or what you are really passionate about, right? If your business is not making a certain amount of money and you know that you need to cover overhead costs, money has to come from somewhere. I've had to sacrifice a lot of my salary, like monthly, for a couple of months where I'm just sending money back home, just trying to make sure that opportunity to build or to invest, like think of it as an investment at the end of the day. It's like we invest in stock market. Why try not to invest in your own personal business too, right? At least the people on my team are not costing me, telling me that this guy is not paying me salary and everything else, right? So taking a little sacrifice from your paycheck and being able to find somebody to be able to be doing the things that you cannot do, right? How do I really just make a sacrifice and be able to just take something to just kind of help, like sustain the business? Because you can't think of yourself as a creative, you have to think of yourself as a business. You're a business. Now that you're a creative, you are now a business. So now that you're wearing your business hat, there's a lot of, of admin things that you have to do. Nobody likes admin. Like no creative would tell you that they love doing admin.
Boss moves, late nights, big dreams, tough fights, payrolls tight, pressure's real. But this is the hustle, the founder's deal. Welcome to the Salary Scramble with Lee Kasumba, where glossy titles end and real founder stories begin. I'm so excited to be having a conversation with Pearse-Elosia. I literally had to practice that. He's a Canada-based cultural strategist, media entrepreneur, arts leader who promotes African and diaspora creativity through storytelling, digital media, and live cultural events. He's the founder of DigiMillenials and leads the Afro Vibes Festival, a major cultural event attracting thousands annually in Ontario, Canada. But just to be clear, in case anybody wants to get it twisted, I don't think any of this is a mistake, and neither is it an overnight success. You see, Peter started his career in Lagos, Nigeria, so we have Nigeria in the house, at a time when the industry in Nigeria was on the cusp of what it is that we see now of it being a global phenomenon. At that time, everybody was hustling and building the industry brick by brick together. Being in Lagos, you could literally feel that the industry was on the brink of something great, although nobody really knew when it was going to happen or how it was going to happen, but we knew that it was about to pop off. Peter was there, and he's taken those learnings into building the culture in Canada. So I'm really excited to have Peter on the show. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Thank you for having me. That was an amazing introduction. Thank you.
I just want to go back to, to get a little bit of context of yourself and your journey in the music and media and culture sector when it comes to Africa and the African diaspora, right? So let's go back to that particular time in Nigeria, when everything was like kind of popping off, things were bustling. Like, how would you have described the vibe and the energy to people who weren't there? Like, what was it like for you from what you can remember?
I mean, the thing is that I was young working at MTV. Like, I think I was in my early 20s. And I just kind of remember just a sense of hunger for just kind of being able to build like what we were building, right? And, the biggest thing for us the biggest mission for us at the time was, there was always a narrative of Africa to the world, right? So we were really passionate about seeing how we could showcase African culture, African music to the world, right? This was before, we had, the success of like our artists on BT award stages. We had our artists on like MTV award stages and the likes, and even like Grammys, for example, too, right? So it was like, there was just that passion to be able to like, just do more for the continent, right? Just being able to get people together, just kind of like create like events, just make sure that like, even I've been with MTV, like the music that is being showed on MTV, showcasing like the best of African culture and the likes, right? So it was just a very passionate time. I worked with amazing people then, just I had great mentors, great colleagues. I just kind of also, I saw that sort of passion for the continent too, right? And even just the MTV spirit itself, there was, we had values that were centered around Africa itself, right? And it just, those moments are literally what shaped me in regards to like the passion that I have now. Just seeing that hunger of like the industry then. I think, I haven't been in Nigeria since I left, but it's like, I know that I would assume that the passion is still there. But I just really just do remember that like at the time, everyone just wanted to take like there was just a passion for the industry itself to be able to just take, just to be able to showcase and do things right. From the festivals, I talk about festivals. I remember Giddy Fest as one of the festivals
Yeah.
back in Nigeria that
I
really kind of
remember
had
that.
a
That was a dope
spotlight.
festival. That was
It
an
really
amazing
was, like,
festival, honestly.
it really was. It really was. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned Giddy Fest as one of them ones because it was one of the moments of my time when working at MTV. It was just one of the ones that I used to enjoy. Like I used to enjoy going for Giddy Fest. Shout out to Chin. And it was just one of them amazing times to just see
Yeah.
the passion, seeing the hunger from different, event cultural creators, event promoters, and just the likes, right? So yeah.
I love that. And even when you're speaking about it, because I even remember, as you know, I spent so much time in Nigeria. Although we were on opposite ends, MTV
Yeah.
and Channel O, but don't worry. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, it was all love. And like just being a Giddy Fest and like going to Elegushi Beach and that whole energy, I feel like it's so undescribable, right? Because everybody was like, we're all like moving around and vibing, and we knew, like, we had that feeling. But like, yeah, it was really dope. Like, I remember those times. So you were working at MTV, and as you mentioned, you were like pretty young, when you started. For you, like, who was the biggest artist or star that you first met and worked with, or that you were around? And what was that experience like, especially being like young and then all of a sudden, boom, this person is showing up? Do you remember that at all?
So this I guess this is a funny story. But it's like, I guess I can share it here, right? My first time working at MTV. Like I said, I just got out of university, so I was just like, I remember sitting in the room, and then the prince, right? The prince comes into the office, and he's greeting everybody, and he's like, hey, and then he calls to me and he's like, hey, boss, Alpha. I'm like, okay.
Like I did.
Yeah, so it was like, I just had random moments like that where it's like we would just have like celebrities coming to the office and just kind of like greet and just chat,
Yeah.
But it was that I remember that was like one of the highest, like, the things I remember like clearly. I literally, I think it was maybe like maybe a week after I just joined the company, and that happened, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess this was going to be happening now. So
Yeah.
but I've had a couple of artists that I've just had opportunity to interact with, just across different events that we've done, and some I have relationships with still. So some of them, how it is, but yeah, I think that was one of a strong memory of mine that I have when it comes to artists.
Just to like tie in a little bit with MTV and your journey, because I think it's so important that people know that even when, you're building your business, you come from like, you have like a backstory, you have a background in understanding the culture and in one of the birthplaces of what we see around the world. So, with regards to now MTV closing at the beginning of this year, like, did you feel like, because some of my friends, as you know, one of my good friends was at MTV, like quite a few, they were like very hurt when they saw MTV like closing down, For you, what was that? What was that feeling like when you realized that, wow, MTV is shutting its doors for the last time?
So it's so funny because I think a lot of my colleagues too, when they saw the news, they went on social media and then they shared stories about the impact and everything else, right? And I had a conversation. A friend of mine called me and he's like, because even I made a post, and he's like, what? He doesn't understand. Like, obviously, business is closing. Why are people so emotionally drawn towards a business closing? And I just realized that if you're not part of MTV, you won't really understand what that meant.
Yeah.
Like, for the people that worked at MTV. MTV was more than a company. I think at some point it was a lifestyle. It was a culture, right? It was something that sort of like, it was a culture for the people that worked in it, right? So it was more than a business. It wasn't just a business shut down. It was like a part of our lives had shut down. Like this thing that we helped build, this thing that we contributed towards, this thing that shaped our mindset, this thing that kind of like created just a certain opportunity for us has literally decided to close its door down. And that's how it felt for me too. Like I said, I think, MTV gave me a sense of purpose when I had joined the company then. And like I said, I had great mentorship from the likes of Alex Okosi, who was the head of MTV at the time.
Yeah.
And for it to have obviously seen, like, obviously, I mean, nobody really wants to see after building a success of a channel or like a brand, and then eventually decides to close down. It did hit, like, it just kind of put us in a put me in a reflective mode about, oh wow, like, this is something that I started my career with. This is something that, we helped build at some point, and then now it's there to shut down. It was a memorable moment for a lot of us. But at the same time, it was like we understand the world is evolving, and then this is what it is. Yeah, it was an interesting news to kind of wake up to one morning to hear that MTV was going to be shutting down. But I think, yeah, it really did hit the spot when the news came, and it was like, okay, cool, we just have to deal with the new reality of the channel being shut down.
And I can definitely attest to that, because I think it's like, although I made a joke about how Channel O and MTV were on opposite ends, I feel like at that particular time, all of us were like really involved in the culture. And so even for me, when I heard about MTV shutting down, it was just like, I was just like, wow, that's crazy, because I still remember all the excitement when MTV Base was coming to Africa. I remember how everybody was hyping it, and it was just like all part of the culture. Like, all of the networks played a huge role in getting African music to where it is now globally. So yeah, I think it's one of those things. If you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So now transitioning, because obviously, like, being in Lagos, starting your career pretty young and being around all of these big names, I'm sure if you started dropping names out, people would be like, it's like, you'll be like, trust, and then going to Canada, that transition, what was it like? Because, when you eventually had to leave to Canada, what was the transition like for you? On one hand, you're leaving behind this amazing career and being part of this amazing culture, this amazing brand. And, African music was like bubbling, and everybody knew something was happening, and then getting to Canada. So did you at that moment, like when you were on the plane or anything, have a little bit of like buyer's remorse, like, I'm leaving this whole thing behind?
I mean, it was a really tough decision, because you leave certainty to uncertainty, and that's literally what my career, like my landing was in Canada. But I came to Canada for a master's. I came to pursue a master's in the first place, right? So I knew that this decision was going to be tough to make, and I had to make it at the end of the day itself, right? But yeah, like you mentioned, it's like there's no place like home to even start with. Like, you leave home, and you live an amazing career like MTV, and then you come into Canada where it's like minus 21 degrees, and then it's so cold. You don't get to see summer until like maybe like June. It's like, it was a tough decision, but it's something that, I mean, I don't regret making. I came here for a master's, and then eventually, the biggest part again is like, you work in an entertainment industry for a long time, like somewhere like in Nigeria or back wherever anyone is on the continent, and then you come to a place like Canada. But the thing is that, like, you don't really have a lot of opportunities to just run into the entertainment industry like that, right? So it was a tough choice for me to have made. Not like I had anybody at MTV Canada that I could hit up and be like, oh, I'm leaving Nigeria, can I come and work at MTV Canada? It didn't really work like that for me. So it was really more of like you say, it was living a place of certainty to uncertainty. But I don't really, I guess, there was a reason why I had to come here. And I'm happy I did.
When you got to Canada, would you say that the whole, I don't want to say like a bug, but would you say that in Canada that African music and the culture and all of that was really popping off? Or was, because in my mind, and I have family in Canada, so let me not be mean, but in my mind, I kind of think like in Canada, people are like slow in the uptake, or was it, did you kind of get a sense that even in Canada, people were interested in what was going on in terms of African culture and music and community and all of that? Or, and if so, was it just with the African community? Because a lot of Africans are out in Canada, or was it like a situation where everybody, in Canada was kind of buzzing about African music? Because this is like now post-COVID, right? So did you feel like everybody was buzzing?
I think there has been a slow uptake, but I think we are getting there. There are people that have been, creating events here, creating festivals, and trying to build that momentum here. In my city, though, like when I moved here in 2021, one of the reasons why I started my festival in the first place was because there were events here and there were festivals here, but I didn't really see a lot of like or there were not enough that kind of brought people outside together, right? To kind of like celebrate our music and our culture. I just remember like on a simple Friday night, for example, you want to go out, you want to listen to music that you know as an African, as a Nigerian man, and you don't hear the type of music that you wanna hear, right? So it's like, yeah, that would happen, or that happened, like several times when I first moved into the city. I mean, it is still happening. And I guess because maybe the city I'm in is really like small as compared to places like Toronto, for example. I think in places like Toronto, places like Calgary, they do have like events, spaces, that bring people together that play African music and the likes, right? But I think there has been a slow uptake for sure, but I think it definitely is getting there. I think just globally, I know that there are award shows, there are big award shows here in Canada that still do not recognize like have like how the Grammys have like its own like Africa category, for example. There's an award show, a big award show here that doesn't recognize that yet. So I think it's still a process that needs to still be worked on. But I know that we're gonna get there. We're gonna get.
So, Peter, would you say that this is where DigiMillenials fills the gap? Is this the reason why you started DigiMillenials? Or maybe I should ask like why you started it before I start putting words in your mouth.
I mean, pretty much, to be honest. So when I landed in Canada and I just looked at like the media landscape and just how things were, I just realized that there were lack of media publications that were laser focused on like African pop culture, storytelling, and the likes, right? And that is like the gap that I really wanted DigiMillenials to fill, like in regards to how do we, like you mentioned, showcase Africa to the world and the world to Africa, right? How do we sort of put a spotlight on the amazing things that Africans are doing here in Canada? How do we put a spotlight on people that don't even know what is happening back home in Africa, so that they can be aware of what's happening here? Because obviously, like you just mentioned, like again, the world to Africa, like Africa to the world was the motive when we were working at MTV. But now that we are in Canada, for example, is like now that the world knows about Africa, how do we sort of continue the conversation, right? With the likes of people like Thames, with the likes of people like Burna Boy, they've been able to expose or kind of change the mindset of what like the African identity looks like. So even people here that were born Canadian, or that were born like not knowing like their cultural heritage, they want to start reclaiming where they are from. They want to start reclaiming their African identity. What platform could they go to just keep them updated on what is going on in pop culture, for example? And that's sort of like where DigiMillenials, that's the gap that DigiMillenials is open to fill, where where just people come to our website, they are reading about just interviews with like their favorite artists. They are learning about what is like the groundbreaking news like back home on the continent. Even here in Canada, putting a spotlight on like Africans that are doing amazing things here. And even like I mentioned, I started a festival called Afro Vibes Festival, and the idea for the festival itself was to bring culture together. So for me, when I think about culture, I think of things like fashion, like music, like like food. How do we sort of put all of the elements that make culture into a big celebration of our identity? And that's sort of like the inspiration behind our festival, right? So I've had stories of kids just saying that they enjoyed the Afrovibes Festival, they enjoyed knowing about the music, about the food, they enjoyed just seeing people together in one community. People have told me about how like it felt like a big family gathering. Being able to have this sort of festival like in Canada just kind of like helps them, remind them of where they are from. So that kind of pretty much is the gap that we're hoping to kind of, or like those are the experiences that we're hoping to fill when it comes to like doing either we do like DigiMillenials, or we do Afrovibes Festival, or we kind of create any other events. Those are the reasons why we created, or we create what we do.
It's such a nice context of what's happening in Canada. Earlier on when you mentioned the fact that an award show in Canada, the biggest award show in Canada, doesn't recognize African music, which is a bit crazy because I think for many people, African music feels like it's the center of global culture, right? But then you're also reminded that you almost need to educate people, and we can't take for granted that just because we assume it from a digital perspective that everybody's into it, we can't take it for granted. Like there's got to be like a schooling process, and like what you're doing with Afro Vibes Festival and DigiMillenials, like a training, not just for people in the market, but I guess also for sponsors and investors and that kind of thing. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that is, like I said, I think there has been a big evolution of where African music has gone to, like where it's going to at the end of the day. Like we have just we've like I just did a video because I've said being a content creator. So I did a video
I saw
like
that
yesterday.
actually. I was like, I saw you. I'm like, okay, Peter, I see. You also want to make money like Cabby.
Yes, please. So I did a video recently about you obviously celebrating like Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl, and I just did a compilation of like the influence or the cross collaboration between African artists and Latin artists, right? And it's just amazing to see how much our sound has traveled, like how much the collaboration between just African music has gone into different markets itself, right? So, the hope is that at the end of the day, like there's more appeal, there's more opportunities for just like spaces that celebrate African music, that recognize African music, that recognize African sounds. And yeah, that's the dream, that's the hope, because for me personally, I think again working at MTV, I think I'm a visual guy. Like I'm a person that I like watching videos, and the biggest thing that African music does for people is it helps translate what our culture looks like when it comes to videos itself, right? So the hope is that like, or the knowing now is that like there's a lot of translation of what that looks like already. Like, a lot of people are gravitating towards certain types of music, which is like, I mean, we have like Burna Boy, we have Thames, we have Wizkid. The more this artist shine on the global stage, the more it does good for us on the continent because it makes us look good. The stories of you walk into places, you're like, oh, I'm Nigerian, oh Nigerian, oh Burna Boy, oh Thames, oh Jollof Rice, and it's great to see that at least there's the recognition of your identity through certain types of music, right? So the hope is that we just continue putting the music on more global stages. We kind of start putting the identity of our culture on more global stages because at the end of the day, there's economic value that is being added towards that sort of recognition at the end of the day.
So I just want to go into like, we've spoken about the industry and, why you put DigiMillenials together and all of this Afro Vibes Festival and everything. I would like to get into like the business of it and like running the business and that kind of thing, right? So with DigiMillenials currently, how does the business structure work?
Mostly part-time. So I'm currently like the only full-time founder, but luckily I've been able to get I work with a lot of like volunteers that sort of come onto the festival on like certain projects that we do. I've been able to get like co-op placements, like people working internships to come onto the platform. And I do have a team in Nigeria because again I forgot to mention that the company actually started in Nigeria. So we have a separate like line or like a separate business sort of running in Nigeria. So I do have people that I have like a team of like 5 people in Nigeria. In Canada, like I said, it's still like a new development. New things we're still kind of figuring things out here in Canada. So the team isn't as large, but we do have like a team of volunteers that support here once in a while. And I just have friends that kind of like I guess come in to help when they can. On the festival side of things, because the festival runs. The festival is in July. So from as early as like October, November, the year before, I already start planning. So I have like a team of like lead volunteers that sort of help out like with planning for the festival ahead of the main festival that we get volunteers for to help out on the day of the festival itself, right? So yeah, it's a great company, and we just hope that
No, that's something I didn't know. I didn't know that DigiMillenials had like a hybrid between Nigeria and Canada in essence, And I suppose it would make sense if a lot of what's happening in culture is being, you know what I mean? It's coming from the source.
Yeah.
So do you think that this is what helps with your content curation and that kind of thing? And what do you think that DigiMillenials does differently to what other blogs are doing when it comes to African and diaspora creativity and culture? What are you guys doing differently?
Yeah, I think I'll say, the storytelling, that how we present, because every news platform is different, right? Every news platform is different, but they probably will say the same thing, but it's a different narrative, was in a different editorial voice, right? So I say we bring a unique perspective of our like own editorial voice. And then when it comes to just like the content and like again just how we sort of create our news and information, I think it's more like the name millennial is more, it is more fun, but like there's a lot of engagement when it comes to how we present our news, the things we speak about, the things we focus. We don't focus on gossip. We don't like gossip. We just focus on on like creating news and information for like our audience, right? So that's the main thing. And then obviously, like you mentioned about Nigeria being the source. Yes, at the end of the day, it's always good to have a team of people on ground that sort of know what is happening back home. Again, like I said, I haven't been back home since I moved here, but I think I'm very much up to date with what is going on back home. That I feel like when I come back, I'm not gonna be like as like, oh, what do you mean that this happened in this music? Like, so. I feel like it's so funny because it's amazing to me to see that because I wake up in the morning and I get my actual news or source of news from DigiMillenials, like from my team back home. So it's like I know that other people also value when they see that too. Like if I'm being able to wake up and see DigiMillenials on Instagram and I'm getting my news and information from DigiMillenials, then I think there's also value to other people too. So it's good that we have people obviously back home creating news and information like for the platform. But at the same time, we also want to start building that here in Canada so that we could have even like there's relevancy of what is also going on here. And we do that, we have that once in a while. But it's something that I really want to try and see how we could just build a full-on ecosystem around, writers, event creators, and just the likes, kind of building locally here too.
What's the big picture idea for DigiMillenials?
So the official registered business name is DigiMillenials Media Companies. Like,
nice.
Because my vision is to be able to have multiple verticals that serve different purposes. We have DigiMillenials, which is like the website, the news and information element of it. We want to be able to create an agency, right? Where, because again, we already do this. We help with on behind the scenes. We work with artists like that. We help them with like social media management, with influencer marketing campaigns. We help like events with like producing events and the likes, right? So behind the scenes, we want to be able to kind of structure like an agency side of things that helps with something like that. We want to have like a festival, that we're currently doing. We want to have like an experiential arm that creates experiences for people. So the long-term plan is to be able to have these different verticals and combine them into one big company,
Nice.
That is the big picture idea of where I want to be able to take the brand to.
Scramble paychecks.
When we had like an offline conversation and we were talking about the business, you were just like, oh, it's a small business. I'm the one who's funding. I have like a 9 to 5 and everything, which I thought was so dope because many people don't know, like as founders, we like, because I know it's a situation for me as well. Like for a large amount of the time, you're getting paid to pay into the business. You're getting paid to pay into the business, Have you ever had like a month or a time when you had to like get money into Nigeria to pay your team, or where there was money that had to be put forward for the festival or anything like that, where you were just like, you didn't know where this thing was going to come from? Like one crazy story of like where you're just like, wow, how is this even happening? How am I even going to, you know what I mean? And you're there like...
Oh, yeah. 1,000%. 1,000%. I feel like with media in general, there's a certain level of name of visibility that you kind of have to get before you start getting like, those regular income and everything else, right? So again, we're still in the building phase. We're still putting things together. But at the same time, I've had to sacrifice a lot of my salary, like monthly, like for like a couple of months where I'm just sending money back home, just trying to make sure that at least the people on my team are not costing me, telling me that this guy is not paying me salary and everything else, right? So, there's that. Obviously, every founder, me personally, I always wish like we could do more. Like I'm always passionate about us being able to do more, so we can even like get the business out there, so that we can actually start monetizing properly, and everybody can even get like more rewards and everything else. But yeah, I have taken out of my salary most times, or like most months. I literally have a percentage of, pay rent, pay this, pay salary for my own personal salary too, right? So, and I say this, I think just like you mentioned, a lot of founders, a lot of 9 to 5, a lot of creatives, the biggest dream is being able to have something to fund your passion or what you are really passionate about, right? So even if you know that your 9 to 5 might not be the end goal for some, there's always seeing it as an opportunity to build or to invest. Like think of it as an investment at the end of the day. It's like we invest in stock market. why try not to invest in your own personal business too, right? And that's sort of like where it's at for me, where it's like, yes, I do take like a portion of my salary and being able to put it into my business so that at least, the people that, because I don't, at some point, the first time, I remember the first time I was starting the business, and a friend of mine just told me that, like, hey, there's no harm in, like, you cannot do everything by yourself. Like, I cannot be the one doing social media. I can't be the one doing editorial. I cannot be the one just like doing everything. So it's like taking a little sacrifice from your paycheck and being able to find somebody to be able to be doing the things that you cannot do, right? And I think that just itself just translated into building what DigiMillenials is right now. From like having like an operations lead to having like an editorial lead, just taking that pick, just for this month, I'm not gonna go outside as much. I'm just gonna be in my house. It's okay for me to pay. It's okay for me to pay, take out of my salary and pay people that should continue doing what they should be doing, right? So that's pretty much what it has been and what I've done. I've been able to do.
And just for that, I mean, I just want to say, like, I think I really admire that about founders. And it's such like a major sacrifice that maybe people would never understand, And because it's so dope on so many levels, outside of the fact that you're self-investing, which is great. So you're showing that you believe in the vision. It's also that you're creating jobs back home, right? It's like you now have people who their livelihoods are like, they're depending on Peter. You know what I mean? So do you ever wake up like feeling like, whoa, you can feel that weight, like where you just kind of like, wow, this thing, I'm in the ocean, I can't get out, but I've got to do it because I've now convinced these people that we're moving ahead, Do you ever get that kind of like weight?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like weight, yeah, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like really just has to be done. Like again, sacrifices at the end of the day, there's benefits or there's investment towards sacrifices that we make or that we have to make itself, right? So it's tough at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's like there's a reward that comes with being able to just like if your business is not making a certain amount of money and you know that you need to cover overhead costs, money has to come from somewhere. You need to keep people happy. You need to because at the end of the day, it's like these are people that are coming towards helping your business, right? So how do I really just make a sacrifice and be able to just take something to just kind of help, like sustain the business at the end? So that's it.
Financial red flags.
What is the biggest financial lesson that you've learned that you would love like founders to understand, especially when they're in the media space and the culture space?
The biggest thing is forecasting expenses. Like, it's important to budget. Especially in a place like, like Canada here, the costing and how you sort of run businesses and how you sort of run festivals or events are way different from how you run a festival or like events in Nigeria, right? There are protocols, there are laws, there are guidelines so that really regulate every single thing that you do, right? So from even the festival for itself, it's like just kind of budgeting and forecasting what sort of expenses you would have. The first year, 2023, when I launched the festival, I mean, for some reason, thankfully, I didn't have to put any money into the festival because we were able to get money from scholarships and grants. The 2024, I put a little of my personal income to be able to sustain because we went from a place of scaling. The festival in 2023 it exceeded our expectations so much that they just kind of like had to be a different sort of experience the next year. So there was a little bit of my personal income that went into the festival itself, but at the same time, it came from no understanding of forecasting expenses, right, and revenue, right. By 2025, again, it's like almost the same thing, but again, just a little less. But the most important thing I can say is just being able to understand, just have a spreadsheet that has your numbers, right? I think growing up, I was never a numbers guy. I hate anything that has to do with data, numbers, Excel. Like I hate Excel so much. But like nowadays, one of the biggest things I spend my time doing is just creating a spreadsheet every other day, putting expenses, data, forecasting, looking at numbers, looking at if this makes sense to do or not, I think that sort of pretty much guides cash flow. It helps guide what you can spend or like what is reasonable, how you negotiate when it even comes to like maybe you have like maybe $1,000 for example for like maybe like an artist for example, and if you cannot maybe do more, you cannot do less, it helps you just kind of know where things are when you're able to put like your whole numbers on a spreadsheet and being able to determine what sort of actions you want to be able to make, right? So I think I would say budgeting is very important, but forecasting expenses and revenue is also so important.
Yeah, I think that's such simple advice, but it's so powerful because I think a lot of times, especially as creatives, because we're both creatives, you want things to like sit in your head. You're like, no, don't, like creatives are always like, we'll find a way, we're going to make it. And then you wake up, it's like, boom, like what's going on?
Yeah. The creative thing you mentioned is so important because I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday about us as creatives, like the biggest tool that we have is our mind, right?
Yeah.
Anything that we really just want creative expression. We don't want to be dealing with things like sending emails, with things like responding to like tasks. Like just give me something. Let me just create, right? But unfortunately, some of us at the end of the day, it would be nice for me to have like an operation, like a co-founder that is an operations person that focuses on things like that. But I'm wearing that hat right now, where I'm the one still being the creative on the creative side of things. At the same time, I'm also still being the ops manager side of things, right? So there are certain things that I have to do, and as creatives, that beyond just creating, on the back end, there are things that you also need to do to regulate, right? That guides your business, because you can't think of yourself as a creative. You have to think of yourself as a business. You're a business. Now that you're a creative, you are now a business. So now that you're wearing your business hat, there's a lot of of admin things that you have to do. Nobody likes admin. Like no creative would tell you that they love doing admin things, but like there are days where you just have to spend time going through emails, creating like PowerPoint decks to go out and sell yourself. Just kind of creating, like, there's just back end things like creating a bank account, just making sure that like you have your operational side of things running for yourself as a business, which is being the creative, right? So just the little things are the ones that really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's most definitely it's the little foxes. Now I want to talk a bit about numbers. When people think of, in general, when people think about digital business like DigiMillenials, and it's possibly because of what's going on in the world. Everybody thinks that DigiMillenials is making like a lot of money, or when they think of the festival, of Afro-Vibes, of the festival Afro-Vibes Fest, people are thinking like, oh, you must be making a lot of money, So there's this perception of like numbers versus numbers. So numbers in terms of attention and attendance. So attendance of people at festivals and attention of people, on socials. And then numbers, like these numbers that you're actually counting. When you're going back, you're like, okay, these many people came, but do the numbers ever add up for you? Like, do the numbers add up in terms of like perception of what people think is happening in the festival and digital media space, versus the numbers that you're seeing in the bank accounts? Do they ever do they add up?
So Afro-Vibes Festival right now is a community festival, so we don't really focus on numbers right now. Actually, like we don't focus on where I can say that clearly. So the biggest thing for us is being able to run the festival for free for the community. We get grants and sponsorship that at the end of the day, because it's a festival, nobody's really paying to attend the festival, right? So, but when it comes to the numbers side of things, from the attendance of the festival itself, there has been impact in regards to what the festival has been able to do in the region that I'm in the city I'm in. We kind of have at least annually over 10,000 people come to the festival right now.
Nice.
And there's a huge impact in regards to the vendors that come to the festival itself, that kind of bring their businesses to the festival. We are on a scale, as Afro-Vibes is growing, as DigiMillenials is growing, we do events too on the side, right? So like DigiMillenials is the more focused side of business for us, right? And on the DigiMillenials side of things, at least we do events that we bring people. For example, last year we bought like 3 big DJs. And just to your point about attendance versus back end, there are some events that I bought in a big DJ and I still lost money on the events. So it's like we like when you think about like the overhead costs, like yes, the numbers are there, but the numbers actually match up towards the expense at the end of the day. It's like you do these amazing things, but at the end of the day, there's always like there's still budget that needs to be considered. There's still expenses that needs to be considered. There are overhead costs that needs to be considered. So even if you might have a certain amount, and again, this is where forecasting comes into play. it was also the first time, second time I had brought in like an international DJ into like the city itself. So there was still a lot of learnings from my side. But mistakes will always happen. You learn from your mistakes, and then you're able to kind of adjust accordingly. So yeah, there have been times when I've done an event or I've done events, and a lot of people might show up, but it doesn't mean that the numbers are translating towards the numbers that people are seeing on the front end.
Talent and hiring culture.
How do you go about deciding, okay, this is the talent that you want in terms of like people who are going to help you push DigiMillenials forward and work on it? And who was your first hire?
It's so interesting because every single person that's worked on DigiMillenials, I've not met any of them in person. All my team I've literally met everyone on my team remotely. So I have an editorial lead, amazing guy. When I decided to launch DigiMillenials, then we followed each other on Instagram, and I just saw like the things that he's done on Instagram, and I sent him a message. I gave him a call. We had a conversation. And I think I guess I've been blessed to just kind of pick up on energy or pick up on personalities, right? And I had a call with him. I heard his passion. I heard how passionate he was just about doing what he wanted to do. And ever since then, we've just been working together, right? That's my editorial manager. I have an operations lead, somebody that helps handle ops or like operations on the back end of things. Amazing guy too. Again, met him virtually. Just scrolling through Instagram, saw this person. Was like, okay, this could be a good fit for us. Let me have a conversation with him, and I had a conversation with him too. So it's just been a matter of just occurrences. I think it's just, for me, it's important that we have a conversation first. I'm not just gonna. I don't even think I don't remember seeing any of their resumes. I didn't have a conversation based on resumes. I had a conversation based on, okay, I've seen your portfolio, I've seen what you've done. Let me speak to you. Let's have a conversation. Let me talk to you. And then we've had conversations, and then we are where we are at today. Same thing sort of is similar for my for the events that I do here in Canada too. When it comes to like the Afro Vibes Festival, I have a structure where I have team leads that like lead the festival, and then we have on the ground on the day of volunteers. My team leads, each and everyone that is on my team lead, there's just there just has to be person, like you just mentioned, there's a personal connection, or there's just a way of like, am I seeing how passionate this person is about what I'm doing in the first place? Like, I've had people that volunteered as just regular on the day of festival, and then they have grown to become team leads just because I saw how they carried just their small role. They were given a small role, and then they were so passionate about it that I felt like it was important that I want to bring them on full time just because of what I've seen them do. So there are instances around that. And yeah, that's how it has been. I think I'm just like, again, no resume. It's just a matter of seeing how passionate you are about something, and just being able to see that, I think you'll be a perfect fit for what we're trying to also do.
CEO Wellness.
Do you ever take time just in terms of like your mental well-being and just like being able to tap out? Like we discussed, you've got a 9-to-5 job. We won't say where it is, but you got a full-on 9-to-5 job, and then there's DigiMillenials and the festival and all of that. Do you ever take time to like kind of like, I don't know, like to tap out? And also from social media, do you feel like digital detoxes are important? Is that something that you do?
100%. So I go to the gym. I think this year, if anything, I've been very intentional about going to the gym. Because mind over matter at the end of the day. Like I always say, like, this is the biggest weapon. This is the biggest thing. Our mind is so important. So you have to get your mind right. I have tried to do digital detox, social media detoxing, but it just never works out for me because I feel like I just need to be tapped and I need to know what's always going on. So it's just always hard for me to just not be on like Instagram, for example. And for me, it's like my Instagram feed, the way I've created my Instagram feed, I create my Instagram feed to a place where it's knowledge or it's information that is relevant to me personally, right? So I don't feel pressure. I don't feel any toxic like information coming to my Instagram feed because my algorithm is perfectly created towards a place where it works out for me. I'm very like, I like to share a lot of memes on my Instagram. I think maybe that might be a detox for me, where it's just like I just unplug. people might send me messages on Instagram DMs. I may not read it, but I might be online. I'm just sharing memes. I'm just laughing on Instagram. Like that's pretty much what I do on social media sometimes. And then just sometimes traveling. I like to, like, every summer here in Canada, when I see that there's sun, I like to just go out and be just in nature. Like I like to go on hikes. I like to go to like the beach, for example. I like to just spend time with friends, and I play video games a lot. And I think video games has just been a moment to just unplug. And I was talking about how even the little doing admin things like sending emails. There are days when it's so tough to just send a simple email. Like you can receive a very simple email that just says, "Hey Peter, how are you today? Can you please send me a budget?" Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I cannot literally mentally respond to this email right now. And I'm intentional about doing that for myself. And I think a lot of people should also give themselves grace. A lot of people have this mentality of, if this is not being done now, it's going to suffer. I'm going to suffer. No, it's like, be kind to yourself. And if your mind is not where it needs to be, you need to take that moment for your mind to get to where it needs to be at the end of the day, right? So, and that's how I approach certain things or certain times. It's so important that your mind is right, your head is right. And I'm very hopeful that, as we sort of continue to grow, there's opportunity for us to be able to, because even my team, like I said, I've not met my team back home in Nigeria. Like I literally haven't seen my team face to face. So I'm hoping for moments where we're able to even like create like things like team bonding, team activities, just have people in the room talking about, the business and sharing ideas and everything else, right? So, but yeah, those are the ways I like to unplug, I like to unwind.
Brick and mortar versus digital.
Your business is fundamentally digital, remote, and people come in for the festival on a need to come in kind of basis. Yeah. So let me ask the question this way then. There might be a perception that running a digital business is cheap. You know what I mean? People might think like, oh, this thing is easy. Like, what are you doing? Just post, that kind of energy. For you, what is the biggest like hidden cost in running DigiMillenials that people will be like shocked at?
I mean, beyond paying salaries or paying staff, I think there are the tech elements towards it, right? We have a website, that we sort of pay. We have to pay monthly subscription for, or else they're about to lose our website. We have emails that we pay for that we obviously need to pay for too. But I think those are pretty much the basic one. I'm running paid ads. We run paid ads every other day to be able to make sure that our business is out there from AfroVice Festival or for DigiMillenials. I think the top of my head, those are the major things I can think of right now. Like the tech elements is the technological elements. Beyond obviously like doing projects, for example, like commissioning projects, like interviews, or like maybe we want to do like interviews, or we want to create like some certain types of like content, right? That's a whole different cost entirely on its own. Every time I get the budget, I'm like, every time my team send me like, oh, this is how much it's going to cost. I'm like, what? These how things are getting expensive right now, But yeah, I think those are the main overhead costs at least right now running the business digitally. I think I would say it's the same thing with the brick and mortar business. I mean, I would say it's the same thing, but with the brick and mortar business, the biggest expense that they pay would obviously be rents, right? If you take away rents from that equation, it becomes the same. It becomes the same thing to itself, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, you want to be able to have strong digital presence. You want to be able to have, be able to pay salaries. You want to be able to pay for things like paid ads and the likes, right? So having a strong digital footprint is very important.
The faith sector.
I've always been Christian, but being an entrepreneur has taken me on a whole different faith adventure, because I'm just like, see, when people say, like when it's like literally by grace, it's like you wake up sometimes and it's like, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, So for me personally, like my faith journey has increased because of being an entrepreneur, because sometimes I look back and I'm like, I just don't know how this happened, It can only be God. What kind of role does faith play in your journey as like a founder and an entrepreneur, if at all?
That's a great question. for me personally, I grew up Christian. I'm Christian, and I just believe that, I tell people this. Right. When it comes to doors opening, the purpose that we are put on earth for, the reason why we exist, and everything else. When you are engrossed in knowing that there's somebody that is responsible for your daily life, right? You really just leave things in his hands, and you just navigate life the way life navigated, in the sense that with DigiMillenials, with Afrovice Festival, there. And I said this in the beginning of the year, when a door opens, right, and if a door closes, right, there's always an element towards why that door closed or why that door is opening. And for me personally, I always give it to God. I always have that mentality of that anything that happens for me, or anything that sort of is going in my way, or anything that's not going in my way, there's a reason why. There's always just a bigger reason why, right? And I feel like I'm just embedded in my mentality of just having God just guiding my daily life, right? One thing I do say, or I always say, is that I don't my relationship with God is not a transactional one, in the sense that I don't I pray to Him and I pray for safekeeping and everything else, but my journey is being able to serve Him on a greater level. I'm not serving God because I'm a founder. I'm not serving God because He has put DigiMillenials on my lap and all glory to Him and I give Him thanks and everything else. I'm serving God because of how merciful He is and how merciful He has been on my life, right? And when I wake up in the morning, I'm praying for God to guide my day, right? And I give thanks to Him for even waking me up in the morning in the first place, right? Not that I'm waking up and saying, God, thank you for DigiMillenials. I appreciate, yes, thank you for DigiMillenials, but it's I'm not living to serve you because I started DigiMillenials, right? I'm happy that you brought DigiMillenials to my lap, and my prayer to you is that you just show me or direct my footsteps and let your will be done in my life. And I think that's kind of pretty much the biggest prayer that I have, because I say, when doors close, my mentality has been that if one door closes, the reason why that door has closed is because the other side of that door are things God hasn't prepared you for yet, right? And that's the mentality that I use. So, and for me, is a redirection towards trying something else, or having an opportunity for something else, right? So, I'm very heavily, I really just let God guide my footsteps when it comes to my own journey as a founder, or just me as a person in general. But at the same time, like I said, I'm not in a transactional, relationship where it's I feel like, God is, because I'm the founder now, DigiMillenials and God is the only thing I pray to God for and the like, right?
Unscrambled wisdom.
What's the biggest perception you had about business that you eventually had to throw out the window because you realize that, look, it's great in practice, in theory, and maybe for other people, but for me, this thing was just I had to find another way.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's people go into business to want to make money, right? There's the idea, first of all, of I'm into business, my first year, second year, I'm going to make money. Now I have an idea that money's going to come. And that's not the reality for most founders. They tell you that it takes maybe 5 years before you will start seeing money coming in, right? And I think with me personally, with DigiMillenials, I think the good thing is that I really never got into creating DigiMillenials with the sole purpose of saying that we want to make money, right? I think my passion is what sort of made me even start DigiMillenials in the first place. It wasn't from a place of there's a more opportunity to make money here. It was more of an opportunity to fill a gap, right? And I'm learning that, I've been in several founder incubator programs, and one of the biggest things that I even just learned was, entrepreneurs in general, you don't go into business with the sole purpose of creating solutions. You go into businesses, or you create businesses with the sole purpose of fixing problems, right? And your business, whatever your business is the mechanism towards how you are creating a solution for the problem that you're trying to fill, right? So for me, it was really just more about a purpose, a passion thing that has now really become my purpose, in the sense of how do I really sort of do this to elevate, African culture and the likes in this space. But I think that's the biggest conversation that people would most likely have is that I'm gonna start a business. If I have a 9 to 5, I'm gonna quit my 9 to 5. I'm gonna make money in the next year. I'm gonna make money in the next 2 years. Nah, like it
So
takes a
don't
while.
do
You need to
it.
grind. Don't do it.
Like, relax.
Don't do it. It takes a while. It takes a while to start getting there, right? So that's the biggest thing I'll say.
What do you think that governments or policymakers or investors need to understand when it comes to possibly investing or creating a policy around or making it more sustainable for people in the creative and media sector? Like, what's the one thing that you think could change? I'll say specifically in Nigeria. What do you think can be done better that would support businesses like DigiMillenials that is running, a lot from Nigeria and other creative and businesses?
The two things I would say is from a place of funding and financial access, right? So funding in terms of like in Canada, I will use Canada as a case study. There's a lot of opportunities for for creators here where they receive like grants on projects that they sort of are working on, because at the end of the day, it's like the way you do a business, the more your business is building, the more things you do, the more it has an impact in the economy itself in general, right? So there are a lot of grant opportunities here in Canada that a lot of creators could have access to, right? This is me speaking because I haven't been back home for a while, but I don't know if there's a popular or like a major grant source back home that supports creators that are building things in Nigeria. So it would be nice to see how we could have like some form of investment towards like the creative economy in general. And just even just the literacy of what the creative economy looks like and how people can navigate towards things, right? In Canada here, obviously, if you have a lot of views on a video, there's money going back to you as a creator, so it motivates people going to want to create, right? As opposed to just back home, like when you look at the streaming numbers of platforms like Spotify, Apple Music. I remember before I left Nigeria using Apple Music, I couldn't subscribe to Apple Music because my card wasn't working. Like my credit card wasn't working to be able to subscribe to something as simple as Apple Music. And I know that there have been people that have been trying to fix that for a long time. But obviously that sort of affects, Apple Music. Obviously they give money back to the artists on the platform based on the country, based on how many people actually are subscribed to their platform in the first place. So if you don't have a lot of people that are subscribed to certain platforms, then there's no money. There's the money that they're going to receive back. It's not going to make sense, right? So that itself is a policy. That itself is something that will be nice to be able to fix. In the sense of how do we sort of create fixes towards just allowing access for these platforms to be able to be on, right? I think it would be so important to be able to have, just more people on being able to access platforms or being able to access the things that they can access, so that, again, from place of creative economy, because there's so much that needs to be done in the creative economy. There's so much GDP that comes from the creative economy. The arts and culture space here in Canada, beyond just even the media and everything else, but there's significance. There's significant economy investment that comes from just the creative economy or the arts and culture space in the first place here in Canada, that I think that if we really do focus on it back home, there's a lot of opportunities for it to even, dilute towards more of the economy back in Nigeria, or just sustain the creative economy back, or the economy back in Africa, like looking at different countries too, right? So those are the main things that I would really say, like how do we really invest in creative economy? And I know that I remember seeing an announcement from was it Mr. Easy last year, talking about investing in something like an arena for concerts in Ghana.
In Ghana, yeah.
In Ghana, yeah. See, I thought I'm very tapped in. Like, like you cannot. I know what's happening back home still. So, it's like those opportunities to be able to create, like, being able to have that. It's amazing, because then you can have spaces to be able to host events, to be able to host tours. I've seen, there are two instances where I've seen international artists not going to tour in Nigeria. I've seen J. Cole. So J. Cole just released his new album. Obviously, J. Cole and Nigeria, like they've been like his last album. I think I can't remember what the album he released, that he performed in Nigeria, and he was surprised that a lot of people knew.
It was Pearse-Elosia. Yeah. I'm
No,
a J.
it was
Cole
one after.
fan, so that's how I knew.
No, it was the one after Forest Hills Drive. What's the one
Oh,
after
okay,
Forest
okay, okay,
Hills Drive? The one after Forest Hills Drive was, I think, the one that he had like a crown. I don't remember the name of the album, anyways, but he goes to Nigeria to perform it like 2 days. He goes to Lagos to perform it 2 days after the release, and the crowd or the response was insane, right? So the expectation now is that, you know, the assumption that everybody had was that, look, J. Cole is doing a world tour and he's gonna want to go to Nigeria, but he didn't go to Nigeria.
Yeah.
He's not going to Nigeria, right? He's not going to Nigeria because, I mean, when you think about it, what infrastructure have we really built to sustain a lot of international artists coming, like the appeal for international artists to come? And I'm not saying there hasn't been, they have, but like, do we have a strong enough system that this becomes a norm? Like that, you know, that international artists want to come back home to Nigeria to tour, right? I think that is so important. That's something that we definitely need to see how we could get going. So from an investment perspective, what do we do to be able to create some form of or create spaces that allow like international artists to come back home to Nigeria to be able to tour? You know, there was J. Cole, there was Ghana. I know Ghana too had the same. There was a lot of, I mean, Ghana eventually came to Nigeria last year, December, I think.
But
itself,
December,
you know,
yeah.
But there was also, again, you know, when he announced the world tour the first time, again, it was, oh, why is Nigeria not on the flyer? Why is Lagos not on the flyer? You did the song with Whiskey, your biggest song, Burna Boy, Ashake, you don't do Nigeria, right? So, you know, there are obviously those things where it's like, you know, we want to be able to see international artists when they are doing world tours, you know, they go to Nigeria, because like we've had a conversation here on this call where there has been a strong appeal of global music, right? And there's a strong influence of Nigerian music or Nigerian sounds in most of these international artists' albums, right? So why would they now not go to Nigeria and then do a tour, for example, itself, right? So how do we sort of create spaces or fix some of those things to be able to kind of like attract more of these international artists to come into the country itself, right? So talking about investments, those are things that I will look at from a point of investment. There are policies that need to be in place to be able to make that happen. Then obviously those are things I would also look at too.
I love that. I mean, so much of what you said, there's so many gems. And I think also when you're talking about the payment ratio for creators in Africa versus outside of Africa, all of that kind of thing. I also think that with government and everything, just create the policy, right? Like literally imagine if the government goes and says, if you don't have, I'm talking about like say platforms like TikTok and that kind of thing. If you don't have this provision, and if you're not treating our creators in the same way, or at least getting a decent rate per view or whatever the case may be, you can't operate in the country. You know what I mean? You've got to use the bully pulpit. At the end of the day, Nigeria is a huge market, you know, however you look at it. And also in general, for me, I feel like African music and culture, it moves so much on social media, and you can imagine that the platforms make so much money off it. There should be a way that they're ensuring that the people who are keeping people on the platforms, you know, in terms of African music and culture from the respective countries, they should also be able to make like a decent living, because the creator economy is huge. You know what I mean? So I think that, I agree with you on that. And even in terms of infrastructure, people always complain. I remember when Chris Brown was in South Africa, everybody is going on, oh, why didn't he go to Nigeria? And it's like, it's not that he doesn't have a lot of Nigerian fans. He performed in Nigeria, as you remember, a few years ago. It's not all of that, but it's like the level of the show that Chris Brown has to put together and where he is as an artist. He can't just go to like Echo Hotel, for example. Do you get what I mean? Like he's like, and he's flying across the room. Like, what's happening? So all of those things, and that brings in money. It'll bring in the ability to have festivals and so forth. So I think you said a lot of things. I'm going to make you the president, Peter. I mean, I call you president.
Scramble or stable?
Okay, so a client says we don't have a budget yet, but let's start. Scramble or stable?
It depends on the clients. That's what I'll say. But I said it depends on the clients. So let's say Scramble.
You're launching a campaign at 2 a.m. because the idea just hit. Is that a scramble or stable?
2 a.m. Nah, I'll say Scramble.
I'm trusting your team to hold things down while you take a break. Scramble or stable?
Very stable.
Hiring Gen Z versus hiring millennial. Scramble or stable? Teasing. I'm teasing. Let me not put you in trouble.
You know what's funny though? You know what's actually funny? I remember that my first not first, like a social media person that we hired like last year or 2 years ago. Though she's Gen Z, right? And the way she approached or the way she pitched to want to be on the platform is she created an email called hire her name at gmail.com, and then she sends like a full-on letter saying this is why you should hire me for my business, I'm Gen Z, and just right there immediately I was like, I love this approach.
Yes.
And then we actually hired and we brought her on the team. It's actually interesting because there's a lot of, I mean, I am millennial, but I think a majority of my team actually are Gen Z.
Yeah.
So, obviously, like they are the ones that at the moment know how to just create, like they are witty when it comes to like just how they approach, like just
the approach,
and the likes, right? So, my question is, I don't have a preference. I'm not gonna be like, oh, Gen Z, millennial. Again, really, it's really just me. It's really just more about how, again, your passion and how you sort of approach, like you're wanting to be passionate about what it is about building, right? That's like the first thing I would see. So, like Gen Z that sends me a very witty email or comment, I'm like, this is actually interesting. This is a good approach. I think like this one, it got my attention. So maybe you could get others too, right? Get attention of others too. So might as well bring you on the team.
I love that. Peter, thank you so much, Peter Pearse-Elosia, for spending time in the Salary Scramble. You actually successfully dodged all the curveballs that would have gotten you in trouble. That's how I know that's how I know you're sharp. That's how I know you've been doing this media thing for long. You're like, there will be no sound bites, there'll be no mistakes. Like, but no, thank you so much for spending time. I really appreciate it. And like, honestly, for real, big up on what you're doing with the Afro Vibes Festival. Big up for what you're doing with DigiMillenials and just in general, I really salute you because you've been doing things for like a while. We've also worked together on other projects, but that's a whole other conversation. But like, I just love your energy and the way that you approach things, and I'm looking forward to seeing how far you take DigiMillenials. So like, big up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate everything you're also doing too. We have conversations here and there too. So I can't wait to see the success of this one too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Salary Scramble with Lee Kasumba. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Find us everywhere. The real stories begin.